நம்ம பண்ணுவோம் அன்மியூட். அவர் அன்மியூட் ஆகலையே, அவங்க தான் பண்ணுவாங்க. Balashankar sir?
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Am I audible, sir, now?
Yeah, fine. You can start now, sir.
So, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Yeah.
Sir, now is it visible, sir? Everything is.
The slide is seen. You are also seen. You can go
Yes,
ahead.
Sir, please, sir. Thank you, Chennai City Branch, for giving me this opportunity to share my experience in managing the COVID cases in Madurai. As told by Dr. Srinivasan, sir, we are not seen that much of cases as Professor Dr. Srinivasan or Dr. Luke Ravi. Yes, you have crossed 1,000 cases. We have not seen that much of cases, sir, honestly. And we have seen a reasonable good number of cases. I thought I will share some of my experiences with you regarding the management of these cases. So up to yesterday, a day before yesterday, the total number of SARI cases are too much. But COVID positive case among us was only 77. And male and female were almost equal in Madurai. Only 77 COVID positive cases we have dealt. Newborn is different. That's only pediatric case I'm talking about. On that, total symptomatic cases were only 25. Out of 77, only 25 cases were symptomatic, and others were just they have been brought for because they were positive, and they have kept under observation and were discharged along with the parents. And recovered and discharged were 21. And there's one case is still with us in the main ward. Come back from there. And we lost 3 children. One is a case of T-cell ALL, which was in relapse, and it came with COVID positivity. And this child had a fever, cough, respiratory distress, and had a 10% ground glass opacity in the CT with elevated inflammatory markers. This child had a elevation of ferritin about 673 and D-dimer of 3,858. And so we managed the child with broad spectrum antibiotics. Then IV dexamethasone, enoxaparin, and remdesivir are also given. But this child developed seizures on 6th day of admission and never recovered consciousness after that, and died the next day. We probably attribute the cause to the CNS metastasis or something, then directly related to COVID. That's what happened with that boy. The next is a 10-year-old boy, once again at T-cell ALL, on maintenance in a private hospital. He has gone there for maintenance chemotherapy, found to be COVID positive. And at that time, he had respiratory distress also, and he was desaturating, and he was referred in a bad shape to us. He had 75% GGO in CT, and he was hypoxic. Immediately put on HFNO, and his counts were very low. He continued to have very low counts. We started him on remdesivir, dexamethasone, broad spectrum antibiotics, and enoxaparin and all. And his ferritin was more than 1,000, D-dimer was 4,400, and IL-6 was 421. So he had very stormy course, but everything settled slowly after 1 week. But his counts never improved. We gave so many blood transfusions, and we gave 2 doses of GM-CSF also, but it never improved. He continued to be sick, and one day he developed a sudden cardiac arrest and died. The third child is a nephrotic syndrome, possibly a congenital nephrotic syndrome, diagnosed in a private hospital with nephrotic syndrome and they were managing there as the child had COVID positivity with inflammatory marked elevation of inflammatory mediators. They are given steroids and everything, and child went in for arrest, and they intubated and sent it to us in the last stage. And we were just keeping the child alive for 1 or 2 days, but as the child's condition was very sick with hypoxia and the shock we received. That's what we did for the third case. We didn't do much for the third case. Then coming to the newborn, Ashok Raja is talking, sir.
Yeah.
If he is talking, I will just skip to the next case. Next. As 3 interesting cases we had. One was a 5-year-old female who was admitted in a private hospital for pain abdomen of 2 days and 1 day's duration of fever. Atypical percentage, that's what I am saying. And the CT revealed acute pancreatitis in the abdomen, and the CT chest was normal. And as the child turned out to be COVID positive. The child was referred to us for management. And child he had mild elevation of serum amylase, but normal lipase and LFT, RFT were normal. And that's why it was referred as the COVID became positive. At admission, child had no fever, had only vomiting and mild pain abdomen and mild epigastric tenderness. We did a CT and X-ray, which was normal. Inflammatory markers were normal. We just managed the child conservatively with IV fluids, antibiotics, pantoprazole, and antiemetic. And child settled within 2 days, and we started the child on oral feeds on 3rd day, and discharged the child successfully on day 10. And the speed CT showed resolving interstitial pancreatitis. And we wanted to rule out other causes of pancreatitis, and we did cholesterol and triglycerides, and that were also found to be normal. So we attribute it mostly due to this COVID virus. And remember, even though acute abdomen is one of the known manifestations of a COVID virus, acute pancreatitis, to best of my knowledge, has not been reported in pediatric age group. One adult case has been described with acute pancreatitis, and probably we have one case, and this is the CT finding in this child. And this child had inflammation of the pancreas, but fortunately, it did not have undergo the stormy course of acute pancreatitis, which we usually have. And child escaped, and we did not do anything. We just gave supportive measures, and child was all right under discharge. The second case is a small child, 2.5 months old. I'm sorry, this is a 2.5 months old child. It's a case of seizure disorder, asphyxia sequelae. The first seizure was a few days back, and so few days later, child had developed second seizure and was having altered sensorium. Admitted in a private hospital. There they were giving all this treatment for seizures. As the child turned out to be COVID positive, they sent the child once again to us with the bag and tube ventilation. As the child was having refractory seizures and apnea, they have intubated, and we received the child once again in a very bad shape, intubated with almost no respiratory effect. Immediately we connected the child to ventilator. We gave only symptomatic management. They have done my CT, MRI brain there. It was normal. CT we could not take. Child did not have any respiratory symptom at all. So no distress or anything. But for a few days later, after admission, this child developed this discoloration in the big toe. This child did not have elevation of inflammatory mediators. X-ray was normal, and we couldn't do CT because the child was genetic was very poor. Though we can say that it may be an iatrogenic cause, and it is most likely to be maybe because of tying of your sensor and all those things could have happened, or some other problem that has caused gangrene. I want to just to tell that this distal limb ischemia has been described as one of the complications of COVID. And we have to remember that acrocyanosis can occur, and the dry gangrene of the toes or digits can occur in COVID. Though this case is unlikely due to COVID, because all the inflammatory mediators, everything is normal. We couldn't do D-dimer, but ferritin, CRP were mildly elevated, and child did not have any other severe features for severe COVID in this child. We gave low molecular weight heparin, tropical nitrosine, and supportive measures. Child has recovered, become negative, and we are managing the child in the main ward now. Another interesting case, a third case, is a 1-year-old female child admitted with a history of foreign body aspiration to us. And we took on a CT, and those patients did not want to stay here, and they just absconded and went to a private hospital. They told to do swab, and swab turned to be positive, so they have sent the child once again back to us. And at the time of admission itself, child was irritable and dyspneic and tachypneic with the saturation was only 90. And the CT showed a suspected foreign body or mucus plug in the lower trachea and pneumonia in the right lower lobe, but RPTs are positive. That's why the child was referred back to us for management. But what happened is the child came to the COVID hospital. We got the ENT opinion. As there was some logistic problem because it was a separate hospital taking for a rigid bronchoscope in a 1-year-old child. Everything is a big problem. They were hesitating, and they were asking us it could be mucus plug, and you can manage conservatively for time being as the child is maintaining saturation with nasal oxygen. But child was continued to have tachypnea and fever. And we were almost walking on a tight rope or walking on knife's edge for 10 days to manage the child in our COVID hospital. And after 10 days, as the child became RT-PCR negative, we brought the child back to our ward. And you can see in the CT that there is something in the sticking in the carina. And X-ray shows right lower lobe pneumonia. We were just managing the child for 10 days with broad spectrum antibiotics and steroids for a few days. And we brought back the child once again here. And there was the problem in getting fitness for anesthesia also. Fortunately, we had our own bronchoscope and we had one good intensivist. He gave sedation and we got the help of our pulmonologist who came and did it with a flexible fiber optic bronchoscope, and they removed the groundnut in pieces, and child became all right and stayed with us for 22 days, and the child was discharged happily. So these were the three cases which were really interesting and came with some problem or atypical problem. Otherwise, among these cases, only 25 cases, we had fever in 15, cough in 8. Only 3 had respiratory problem. 3 had typical GGO in CT. 2, that leukemia case I told. 1 was this anal perforation case, a surgical problem. It had 10% GGO. And these were the 3 cases which had CT findings. GI symptoms, 1 I told pancreatitis, 2 were having loose stools. And the 3 cases had CNS symptoms. 1 came with encephalopathy, irritability, and recovered well. 2 cases came with seizure. 1 child is still having seizures and it is in the main ward we are treating. And the 2 cases, 1 case with CKD came and he was having tachypnea and had some X-ray infiltration. He recovered totally and discharged. The nephrotic syndrome died, I told. 4 surgical cases, 1 abscess intersection that recovered totally. 1 head injury also had a positivity and that also recovered totally. This child anal perforation is recovering now. Comorbidity, 1 case was cutis laxa. It's a severe form of cutis laxa. The textbooks say that they can have emphysema in the lung. And this child has been admitted 2-3 times already in our main ward with severe wheezing and pneumonia. That time when it came, it turned out to be COVID positive. And we had to admit in the COVID ward, and child had a very turbulent course, but did not have the patch in the X-ray, only bilateral hyperventilation was that. We couldn't, child was just 11 months old and we couldn't sedate and do CT. We managed with the symptomatic treatment, child recovered and got discharged. And 2 cases of renal failure I told, hematology case I told. 1 case post-Kasai. This fellow also had a dyspnea, tachypnea, and had patches in the X-ray. And he had deep jaundice, he was in biliary cirrhosis. We couldn't give antiviral drugs and all. We couldn't take CT. We managed with antibiotics and steroids and he recovered. We couldn't go for remdesivir as he was having a deep jaundice. Wilms tumor, he had only fever but did not have any other symptoms. And he recovered spontaneously. We did not do anything in this child. So these were the comorbidities we have seen along with our cases. These were the interesting findings we had. If you got any questions, I am happy to answer, sir. This is our experience. I think Ashok Raja will talk. Thank you, sir.
Excellent, Sri Balachandra sir. And it is very surprising to see that you are reporting a pancreatitis.
Yes, sir.
Even in Chennai, like what I had one QT syndrome, you had one pancreatitis.
So you had pancreatitis.
Yeah, pancreatitis. And you were talking about the gangrene. There are reports that many cases can present with gangrene also.
Yes, sir.
What was the platelet count for those for gangrene? Platelet counts were normal?
Normal, sir. Normal, sir.
Everything was
inflammatory marker, mild elevation of CRP, sir. Otherwise, count everything was normal.
Everything was. Now the child is recovering. Now the child is.
The child is seizure free and it is recovering, sir. It is now transferred back to main ward and it is recovering.
Okay. So
the gangrene stopped there, and we are continuing heparin.
See, most of the CT findings are not correlating with the X-ray chest. Did you advise CT for all children or you do specific cases?
Sir, we were taking CT for all cases initially. Okay. To be frank with you, we had one problem in doing CT in a small child. We sedated a child, arrested actually, but we revived and saved the child. So we were little hesitant to do it in all the cases. Older children, we never hesitate to do. All older children, even with respiratory symptoms or no, we do CT. Small children, we decide how far we will be able to do it successfully. If the child is being able to sedate with pedicloral and all, then we do it. Otherwise, we don't take risks because the resources are poor there. We couldn't intervene much in that place where there will be only one pediatric PG. He may be struggling. So we stopped doing it for all the cases unless its child is reasonably older or just we can sedate with oral drugs, then we are doing, sir. Not for all the cases. Only 3 cases we had typical finding of ground glass, sir. Otherwise, no.
Excellent, sir. As you said, even I had one case of T-cell leukemia having 75% ground glass appearance. Then after 2 weeks, it's slowly disappearing also, as you said. And all these leukemias, you said around 4 or 5 cases, and I have seen around 30 cases. In fact, Adyar Cancer Institute, they are referring most of the cases to ICH with COVID positivity, and we are treating. But I will come back to you after seeing the another panelist if there is any question there. No?
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
I will come back to you. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Let me go to Diana from Chengalpet.
Yes,
Diana?
sir. Good evening, sir. Good evening, sir. Am
Yeah.
I audible, sir?
You are
Shankar,
audible.
sir, please
Wait.
stop screening, sir.
You can share your experience, Diana. You can share.
Okay.
Diana, you can unmute.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Go on.
So at the outset, I would like to thank our senior
Not-
members of IAPCCB. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, rather than slides, you speak from your heart. Speak from your
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. I would like to thank our senior members of IAPCCB, my beloved Professor Dr. Sudhakar, and my respected teacher and our mentor Dr. Srinivasan for giving me this opportunity to be a panelist here. Just I would like to share my experience in Chengalpattu Medical College Hospital. Actually, we have been admitting and managing COVID cases in a dedicated COVID isolation ward in Chengalpattu Medical College. Actually, this ward provides care for antenatal mothers, postnatal mothers, along with the babies. We have a newborn ICU care inside the COVID isolation ward, and also for the pediatric cases, along with the adults. So we have, along with that, we have a separate doffing and donning unit for the protection of healthcare workers. So we pediatricians we have been treating the cases inside the COVID isolation ward, especially from April to September 2020. Actually, the first case was admitted in April 10th. That was a 11-year-old female Muslim girl who had an exposure to her father who was COVID positive, returned from the conference at Delhi. That was the first child, but the child was asymptomatic. So from that child till September, we have a positive of 180 pediatric cases. And among those cases, most of them, 96 to 97% are asymptomatic and only with mild symptoms, fever 1 or 2 days, with the cough, sore throat. Very few have vomiting and loose stools. So most of the children we encountered are asymptomatic and mild URI symptoms. And coming to newborn cases, there are 380 newborn babies born to antenatal COVID positive mothers inside the COVID isolation ward, especially delivered in a COVID OT inside the COVID ward. And among those 319 babies, 19 babies were tested COVID positive, especially tested after 48 hours of delivery. So among these 319, these 19 babies were admitted and managed, assessed and managed. And among these 319 babies, 36 babies were between 32 to 36 weeks. And one baby is a 31 weeker delivered by 1.2 kg. Initially, we struggled a lot giving surfactant, managing with the ventilation. The baby luckily improved after 72 hours of our ventilation and weaned after on the 4th day and managed with 50 days inside the COVID isolation ward by our pediatricians and discharged with 1.8 kg. So that is a 31 weeker baby. Another baby, 25 weeker, delivered by 1 kg. Unfortunately, the baby expired after 48 hours due to complications of prematurity. So this is the census about the newborn. And I would like to share a very few scenarios regarding the atypical presentation of COVID, especially in Chengalpattu Medical College. Actually, we have a case, we have a child with already a known case of neuroregression disorder presented with COVID positive status. He improved, and another child post Kazai status, and a child with a neurological presentation. So these are very few rare presentations in our Chengalpattu Medical College. So this is a neurological case. Actually, he's a 11-year-old boy hailing in Arakonam. He had symptoms. This happened 1 month back. He had symptoms of headache, diplopia for 2 days, for which for these complaints, the child attended OP at CMC Vellore. He got admitted there, evaluated and tested and found to be COVID positive. And these their parents refused to continue treatment there. They came here and admitted straight away in our COVID isolation ward. So he had headache, diplopia, and very mild weakness of both lower limbs, especially symmetric ascending type of weakness, but not very rapidly progressive. and he was admitted, evaluated, monitored inside the COVID isolation ward. Especially he had on examination, he had a mild abduction deformity, right lateral rectus palsy, and he got very minimal weakness. Especially he only while walking, he has very minimal unsteadiness of gait with the difficulty in squatting, getting up from the supine posture and climbing stairs. And he had mild distal muscle weakness also. On examination, he had arefluxia, and his power was only 4/5 in both upper limb and lower limb, both proximal and distal. His power was only 4/5. He had arefluxia, knee jerk and ankle were absent. And we thought of initially with the headache, diplopia, right lateral rectus palsy, we thought of signs of raised intracranial tension, and we immediately, the child was done MRI brain with MRA, MRB, and luckily it was found to be normal. And with this weakness, but it has not progressed to bulbar, no symptoms of any bulbar palsy. So the child was again taken MRI spine, but both found to be normal. And CSF analysis was also done. The protein sugar was also normal. There was no albuminocytologic dissociation, but clinical symptoms correlating with Guillain-Barré syndrome. So for the benefit of the child, we tried with intravenous immunoglobulin for 5 days, and after completing the intravenous immunoglobulin therapy, the child improved after 10th day, and the child got discharged after the 14th day of illness. So this is an interesting case presenting in our COVID isolation ward in Chengalpattu. So his inflammatory markers were all normal and not elevated. So this is another child. This child had been diagnosed as a 5-month-old child, had been diagnosed as a neonatal cholestasis at ICH. The Kazai's procedure done at 2.5 months of age. And this child brought here at least 1 month back with the complaints of fever for more than a week with vomiting, loose stools, and this child got admitted and evaluated in our pediatric ward and found to be COVID positive, shifted to COVID isolation ward, and her inflammatory markers were all elevated. She had ferritin of around thousands and CRP 57, and her D dimer was around 949. So all these were elevated. After treating with broad spectrum antibiotics, the child's fever had not been resolved. So finally, the child had never had any clinical signs of inflammation, but since her inflammatory markers were elevated, we treated the child with steroids, and after starting 3 days of steroids, the child's fever had resolved, and the child improved after 5 days and got discharged. So these are the two clinical presentations, atypical presentations actually in our Chengalpattu Medical College we encountered, sir.
Yeah, it's very good, Diana. In fact, even ICH, we have had 2 cases of Guillain-Barré syndrome with COVID positivity and recovering after the immunoglobulins. And as you rightly said, being in the government institute, we take the steroids at the first step in most of the cases. In fact, I told you already in my presentation also, when I had a dengue epidemic last year, around 45 cases had a liver problem with elevated enzymes, with the ferritin high, with LDH high, and most of the cases became all right after giving steroid. In fact, last year we were telling that as a secondary HLH or macrophage activation syndrome. The nomenclature differs. So this child also, any child persistent to have fever after 5 days with COVID positivity, you should suspect the other problem. You cannot take it as a normal COVID, as you rightly said. Okay, so I will come back to you after getting other panelists. Now, I request Dr. Kanimori Vendan, a radiologist from KKCTH. Madam.
She's not able to log in, so we can ask Dr. Devasena, madam.
I'll go to Devasena. Deva, you are there? Devasena? Dr. Devasena? I'm not able to see her. Sudhakar.
No, I am giving a call. She left, sir. I will give a call to her.
Till the time I will interact with Diana, that your newborn cases did not have any stormy sessions. What you have, some atypical pediatric cases you have received. For both Balashankar and Diana, I am asking, do you have a exclusive pediatric COVID ward, or you are combining with the adult ward? Dr. Balashankar also. Do you have any exclusive pediatric ward?
No,
Or
sir, we don't have a exclusive pediatric COVID ward, sir.
I think
It is,
I think we should have
Space
a,
constraints.
yeah, I understand, but it's apart from space, I'm always worried about the adult viral load and the children getting exposed in the adult ward also. So
Yes, sir.
as far as possible, we
Yes,
should
sir.
have an exclusive pediatric ward, maybe even newborn may be combined as I am doing in ICH, where I
Yes,
have
sir.
taken the newborn along with the pediatric cases also, so that it will be very beneficial for the children, because we don't know the viral load, because in government setup, we are not knowing the viral load. No cycles are being done in government cycle. They say positive, negative, that's all. We don't know how many cycles they have done the RT-PCR to say excess viral load or not moderate or very mild viral load. So maybe in future you can try a separate ward for this COVID babies, COVID children, and you are not doing any antibody testing for all these children.
We have a separate ward for suspected cases. We keep them separately, and we take some extra
I
precautions
want
for
to
that.
ask one more question, sir. So many cases you have seen. How many cases where the X-ray was showing pneumonia with COVID positivity, sir?
I cannot say exactly, sir. Maybe 5 or 6. That's all, sir. Otherwise, almost all of them were asymptomatic.
Because I am
Almost all of them were asymptomatic.
stressing this point in ICH, around 800 to 1,000 SARI cases we have investigated with the X-ray tests, and most of the pneumonias were there, but all are COVID positive, and the pneumonia get cleared after treatment with the antibiotic. So let us not forget the bacterial infection which is prevailing along with COVID. Just not focus on COVID alone. Similarly, I want to stress one more point, that as WHO very clearly says that when you want to diagnose your COVID with the inflammation or something, you should be very thorough in ruling out other infections, including the other viral. In fact, 2 days back, you would have seen adenovirus is coming back with a lot of pharyngoconjunctivitis and everything with this one. So always better to rule out other bacterial infection and other. One more thing, do you give importance to NLR ratio? In governments or in adult, they give NLR, very important, because they say neutrophil divided by lymphocyte ratio more than 3, they will be very cautious. More than 5, they say poor prognosis.
Yes, sir. We have to take it into consideration.
Anything like that in children?
Yes, sir. We have to take it in them also into consideration, sir, because
Do
we
you
have to
think
rely on that also.
You have to realize, do you think it is very significant?
Sir, it is not at all significant in children, sir, when compared to the adults. If you go back to the studies and various researchers from various countries, especially from China, there are only 3% of the children presenting with COVID had lymphopenia. Significant lymphopenia is present only in 3% of the children. So it is not at all significant. This is why, because that immature immune response in children causing this decreased activation of the immune cells, especially the CD4 helper cells, that will lead, not causing this increased lymphopenias. And another thing, the recruitment of neutrophil to the site of injury, especially in case of lung injury, lung involvement, the recruitment of neutrophils also will be very low in children when compared to adults. So we get less number of cases with the lymphopenia in children, sir. So,
okay,
but
I'll give you one scenario. Your total count is 18,000. Your polymorph is 80%. Your lymphocyte is 10. How you are going to approach this child? This scenario was already shown by our Balasubramaniam sir in his slide. I'm just asking you how you are going to be in a government setup. The total count is 18,000. Your polymorph is 80%. You want to take it as a lymphopenia, or you want to take it as a neutrophil leukocytosis, because the total count also is very high. How you go about these kind of cases? Any idea? Sir Balashankar sir, you can also tell till the other panelists join.
Better don't to go by only one investigation or one marker, sir. Always we clinically correlate, sir.
Yes, sir.
We
Exactly.
always clinically correlate. Even for that child with limb digit ischemia and gangrene, I was not convinced that it was due to this thrombosis in various places and all. So we always go by the total clinical picture of the child, and then taking one single marker like this NL ratio of more than 3 and all those things. Number 2, in children, COVID has come recently, but sepsis has been there for more than 100 years. So
Exactly.
they are prone for all sorts of infection, especially the children who have the comorbidities. We have to think of that other aspect like associated bacterial infection and all. and we should be vigorous in giving antibiotics and all. Then just sitting and waiting, that's probably MIS and all those. That's what I honestly feel.
Any viral, any bacterial, or any malignancy can produce cytokine
Yes,
storm.
sir.
Cytokine storm. So let us not forget the basic test like peripheral smear, where you can see toxic granules and band forms and other. Please,
Sir, I can talk here, sir,
Yeah,
because I'm not able to join there. I'll talk here.
please explain to the people about TrueNut and RT-PCR. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Then please explain when do you want to do repeat test, even though the government is not advising. And
Yes.
please explain when do you want to do antibody testing, if at all you are interested to do.
Yes, sir.
Kindly answer.
Sir, please, sir. So we have different types of tests to detect the antigen. One is our RT-PCR test. The other tests are TrueNut and CBNut. So this RT-PCR test, so we have to determine like the date of testing. Day of testing is very important. The incubation period is 2 to 14 days. So when samples collected will be, first the samples are very important. Swab or the oropharyngeal swab, and the transport media is the viral transport media. So once they start doing the RNA extraction test, and then they run the RT-PCR. So the SARS-CoV gene is being detected. So this amplification is called as the cycle threshold value. When the cycle threshold value is between 10 to 19, they denote it as severe or severe. Severe in the sense the viral load is heavy, but the CT value is to 15. And but if the viral load is little low, the CT value is between 20 to 25. It depends on the test kits also. So this CT value is very important, because what happens when the CT value between 25 to 35 is given as positive, then we feel that child is really, it's affected with COVID, but it is not so. So it depends on test kits. Like if it's a lab then test, 11 to 19 is the ideal value, CT value, and we consider it as positive. So less than that is considered as negative, and above 20 also it should be considered as negative. So it varies from lab to lab, and that causes confusion. That is one thing. And the ideal way of antigen testing is RT-PCR, though we have only 70 to 75% true positivity, but false negativity is there here, because the sample collection, if there's no proper sample collection either by nasopharyngeal swab or oropharyngeal swab, then we'll have a false negative report. The ideal sample would be actually tracheal aspirate and bronchial lavage sample. So this will give you 90% positivity rate. That's why in children, most of them are like a tracheal aspirates. So even in MNB, we are able to detect this through RT-PCR. And why the mother is negative and the child is positive, there's a confusion is here. Because the mother would have been positive 2 weeks back, and the child's incubation period or the infective period would have started off late. So this is one thing. And in TrueNut and CBNut antigen, but what the difficulty in TrueNut is, like, you can run only 8 samples at a time, and in CBNut you can run only 4 samples at a time. So that is the thing. But in RT-PCR, we can run 90 samples at a single given time. That's the advantage. And one more thing in TrueNut, if the first gene is detected within 1 or 2 hours, then we have to confirm it with the detection of RD-RP, that is reverse, like RNA-dependent RNA polymerase. So this enzyme, apart from the gene, the RNA-dependent RNA polymerase need to be detected also to say it is truly positive, for SARS-CoV-2 infection or COVID. So that's, whereas in RT-PCR, within 5 to 6 hours, we are able to test 90 samples at a single given time. And the ideal sample is very important. RNA extraction has to be strictly followed. And all these measures are taken properly. RT-PCR is the ideal method. But between 5th to 10th day, the better, the results are better. And because the viral load is heavy, we don't miss on that. But between the 1st to 5 days, most of the cases, it turns out to be RT-PCR negative. Then when we repeat the test, between the 5th to 10th day, it turns out to be positive. And after 10th day, for most of them, it turns out again to be negative. And we had to test in a single lab. If it differs from lab to lab regarding the CT value. So we had to standardize the CT values based on the lab gun kit or based on the biosensor kit.
So these are the two important things. And then coming to the antibody testing. Antibody testing, yes, we have IgM, detection of IgM antibodies between the 7th to 14th day, and IgG antibodies also, it's being detected from 14th day onwards till 21 days, but beyond that also it goes on till 3 months. The persistence of IgG antibodies lasts till 3 months also. So that is again is important. Then the third thing is the inflammatory markers. Before that, the inflammatory markers should be tested. We should test the inflammatory markers or pro-inflammatory markers between the 5th to 10th day along with the RT-PCR. So what are those? CRP, the ferritin level, D-dimer level, and IL-6 level, along with the renal function tests like albumin, and then urea and creatinine. Serum urea and creatinine is very important, and the liver function tests also. So why do we need to do that? Because detection of ferritin levels are very high. They're measured in nanograms per microliter. If it's above 500, then there's formation of fibrinogen and thrombin formation, and that results in microclots. This is the cytokine storm period. So here we have to follow up with the pro-inflammatory markers. It is a must. So once the child has symptoms of fever, myalgia, or it comes from a contaminant zone, or if it has history of contact or the contact with parents who are positive, so such children should be definitely tested. And then these pro-inflammatory markers will give a clear indication for treatment also. They're not only inflammatory markers, they're also called as a prognostic markers. So when the child is on treatment like steroids or tocilizumab or other immunomodulators or immunosuppressants, or when the child is on heparin or blood thinners like warfarin, so the level should come down. The initial ferritin level, if it was high during the 5th or 7th day, by 10th day it should have come down. That shows the child has shown a good prognosis with that particular treatment. So it's also a prognostic marker apart from the inflammatory markers. Then the hydration and everything will matter, and that might bring down the ferritin values. And CRP is a very useful and a simple indicator. So CRP values, if we are increasing throughout, that means the child has not improved. The CRP values comes down, then it is showing a good, prognosis. So similarly with the IL-6 also. So D-dimer is again, it represents the fibrinogen level and the thrombin levels in the blood. And again, that is also very, very important apart from the ferritin.
Yeah.
So apart from this and we have we have even ELISA kits to detect IL-6, but there, if you feel that is very important, that ELISA kits also are available to detect IL-6. So these are the important markers to be measured during the infection.
There are, madam, 3 questions, madam. 3 questions. Number one.
Yes, sir.
3 questions I want to ask.
Yes,
3 questions.
Okay, sir.
About the new vaccine, new testing, the Tata company has developed today. It has come in newspaper. They say it is very cost effective and a very early detection. What's your opinion? Today's newspaper is publishing that Government of India new testing apart from RT-PCR TrueNet, the Tata company has developed.
Yes, sir. That seems to be very promising. They're going to take another 3 months to bring that test. So that will avoid certain steps, and the specificity is also high. Yes, sir. I also saw that in the Hindu paper. That is a welcome change, and it can be easily carried out in a laboratory, and cost effective will be much, much lesser compared to a single RT-PCR test. That test might cost about, RT-PCR test might cost about nearly 3,500 to 4,000 rupees. But the recent test which they are going to bring out, that might cost only about 500 to 600 rupees. Because the reagents used are very less, and it's definitely going to be very useful. It can be installed even in small labs with the normal laminar flow. Not even biosafety cabinet is needed.
Madam,
and the false negatives are going to be less. Madam, it is really going to be a good welcome change test devised by Tata Group.
Madam, we are running out of time, Madam Isha.
The last,